I really didn't want to do this. As many of you know, over the past couple of weeks, I've kind of been sharing my grievances and concerns with the Nintendo Switch 2. And really more than that, just the general way that the gaming industry has been moving, and more specifically, the direction that Nintendo has been moving over the past generation. Naturally, I've noticed mixed reactions. For the most part, those reactions have been pretty level-headed regardless of which side of the fence you sit on, which is something that I wholeheartedly appreciate. Many people are completely aligned with my views, and if anything, might actually be harder on Nintendo than I'm being. On the other hand, you have a sizable collective of people that are saying that the price is well worth it for them, and they are gladly going to buy into the Nintendo Switch 2. The general theme for me for the past few weeks has kind of been, if you think it's worth it to you, and you really want to buy it, by all means, don't let anybody stop you, and don't let anybody make you feel bad about it. And despite what the title of this video is, don't let me rain on your parade. But if you're somebody more or less on the fence, or maybe you've already made up your mind but you're just not quite sure if it's the right decision, hear me out. Today's topic is not entirely about boycotting Nintendo, although it is to an extent, obviously. I wanted to focus more so along the lines of video game FOMO and the negative impacts it's had on the gaming world. This is a topic that I have always felt very strongly about, and it just kind of happens that it completely ties in with the Nintendo Switch 2 release. I'd like to believe that even if I was not completely against everything that I've discussed in regards to the Nintendo Switch 2, I'd still be able to have this talk with you guys. But I also realized that as a Nintendo fanboy, I was ready to buy that thing. I was determined to get one day one. I was determined to finally upgrade the Nintendo Switch, which has been probably my favorite console of all time. Even as I watched the Direct, I did not lose any hype for it. Between the GameCube stuff, Kirby Air Ride, Game Chat, Donkey Kong obviously, and even the Mario Party Jamboree stuff, that's been one of my favorite Mario Party games. My hype was at an all-time high. But then, as you all know, it just slowly started to slip away. I began to reflect. I began to share my thoughts with all of you. The more I let it sit, the more convinced I was that this was not the console for me. And really, it's less about the console itself and more about the practices of Nintendo around that console, leading up to that console. And leading up is a very broad term. You could argue that this has been a long time coming. Many of us have been so distracted by the quality of the content that we didn't feel a need to stop and ponder about the business practices that were leading up to it. But like I said, I've kind of already gone into this. We've spent 2 weeks, I've uploaded something like a dozen videos about it already. I don't want to keep recycling my thoughts, and I don't want to just make this a repeated video. I didn't plan for it to come to this, but where I'm currently sitting, I think it's worth asking you all to join me in boycotting Nintendo until the end of 2025. In part because I think it is worth it to us as consumers going into the next generation of consoles with a looming uncertainty of the way that this industry is flowing. But also because I think one of the things that are really having a negative effect on the gaming industry in general is FOMO. For those of you unaware, FOMO is the fear of missing out. It's when a player feels compelled to chase the hype, needing to play a game at launch, specifically because that's when everybody's going to talk about it. Or in this case, needing to purchase a console immediately so they can be part of the hype. Now, there are instances where FOMO kind of makes a little bit more sense. The launch of a multiplayer game, for example. The player experience is not only at its largest, but everybody's on an equal playing field for the most part. The game metas haven't quite been set up yet. You almost feel like a pioneer, finding out all the secrets, learning all about the strengths and weaknesses. In many ways, it can be a thrill. Now, I'd argue that I don't know how much this would actually apply to Mario Kart World specifically, but in general, these multiplayer games will die out eventually, and sometimes if you get into it too late, you might miss out on the experience. For single-player games, on the other hand, I think it can be a much bigger detriment. There's almost a fear of missing out on the discussion, a fear of being spoiled. Once again, a fear of not being around when the hype is all there. But I would argue there are more drawbacks towards your experience if you were to focus on these things more than the actual game itself. How many times have you experienced a game that was rushed or incomplete, only to discover that if you had just waited 6 months to 12 later, it would have been a much more favorable experience? Or perhaps even worse, how many times did you yourself rush to finish a game in order to be part of the conversation? To jump into your spoiler-free Discord chats to go through the experience with others that have also rushed to complete the game? Obviously, this is not always the case, But during moments like that, you might not have gotten to fully appreciate the game as much as you otherwise would have. You might have skipped over some things that would have made it drastically more enjoyable for yourself. In essence, you might have ran straight through the field instead of taking the time to breathe the fresh air. Sometimes I pick up a game, maybe even a decade after its release date, and I just spend a weekend playing it. No thoughts on what the public discourse around the game is, no plans to even make a YouTube video about it. Just me in the game, moving at my own pace, letting myself get distracted where I need to get distracted, and to get hyper-focused where it's necessary. There's a surreal feeling at the end of those games, and a fond memory when I look back to them that's unlike most other gaming experiences in the modern age. It just makes it so much easier to appreciate. And remember, these are single-player titles. They don't really change for the worst. Many times, between the DLCs and the updates, they even get better. And they get more affordable too. Human nature dictates that if we spend more on something, we expect better from it. What I want to feel when I'm playing a $20 game is not the same as what I want to feel when I'm playing a $60, $70, or I guess now even $80 game. I have higher standards for the title the more that I pay. And this applies to everything in your life. You spend more money, you expect better quality. You become more rigid, less adaptable, more intolerable, more unforgiving. It takes a game that would have been a 10 out of 10 for you if you spent a quarter of the price, and it could potentially turn it into something that you view as a 6 out of 10 because it didn't live up to the hype that you created in your mind because of the price that you had to pay to purchase the game. Not to turn this into a nostalgia fest, but when we were kids, we would buy games and we would play the hell out of those games. And it wasn't even necessarily that those games had more content. Many times they were significantly smaller than what you see now, with padding seen through game overs and losses of lives. But we became masters of our trait. The experiences became second nature to us, because purchasing a game was out of our hands. Mom and Dad decided when you were getting your 1, 2, 3 games a year, but we got our money's worth, our time's worth for those games. Today, we just buy things because they're on special. We know we'll play it later, but we never do. We want to buy it because everybody else is buying it as well. And we want to buy it because everybody's talking about how it's on sale. How many times have you bought a game and not finished it? Because by the time you wanted to go back to it, the next big game was out. How many games have you written down in your backlog but you haven't gone back to those either because you want to play the game that's coming out in December? Oftentimes this is my experience, and I highly doubt I'm the only one. I feel like there are a ton of people out there that have way more games than they actually have physical time left on this earth of playing video games. Just games they've purchased and downloaded to fill up their library so that they can get to it when they have a chance to get to it. Sometimes we'll even buy games and play games that we are not even interested in just because of the hype. Imagine spending 40 hours doing anything that you're not entirely convinced is your cup of tea. That would be considered insane in any other circumstance. Paying more money for a genre that you might not even enjoy to spend extra time on it so that you can be a part of the hype. The reality is the only benefit of playing a game when it first launches is to be part of that hype. Everything else is a negative. It goes the same for PC upgrades, for platforms, for phones, for consoles. We're trying to upgrade what we have even though we're not done with what we have. And we're only doing that because the next thing is available, because the people online are also doing it. Instead of just taking the time to sit with what we already own, sit with the games that we already purchased, games that have received that 10 out of 10 scores from the biased critics. But because they're 2 years old, and because they're on the old console, they're no longer worth the effort, no longer worth the time of day. And I understand when new technology comes in, it's very exciting. But at the end of the day, graphical fidelity can and usually will always grow, but the experiences don't always live up to those upgrades. It's why retro gaming is as popular as it is. It's why there's a whole community of patient gamers out there that won't buy things on release and will play them many years later, experiencing those games in a much more stress-free environment, and in turn being able to appreciate those games because of that lack of stress, whether it comes to how much the game costs or feeling the need to finish it at a certain time. But instead, gamers seem to be more interested in the drama around a game, rather than the actual game itself. And it's a detriment to the industry. It turns game releases into more of a soap opera. Which critic said this? Which journalist said that? Which insider leaked what? There's a dramatization of the success and failure, artificially manufactured by an arbitrary numerical ranking. Just take a second to think of all those games that you played, that you did not feel the pressure of being the first to buy it, the game that you waited for a sale to purchase, a game that you were able to take your time and appreciate because you didn't feel the pressure of the rush to join the online discourse. I don't know about you, but for me, those are way more memorable. And look, I understand there's a fear of having the experience tainted because of spoilers. But while a spoiler can taint an experience, chasing hype can completely ruin it. Off the top of my head, there are only 3 games in the past few years that I have chased the hype in order to play early. The first one was Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I'm one of the lucky few that had the game delivered to me a few days before it was meant to come out. Naturally, at the time, given that I was a YouTuber with under 1,000 subscribers, I thought it was an opportune moment. I sank 30 hours into Zelda Tears of the Kingdom over a span of like 2 days. All so that I could release a 7-minute review. That video did take me close to 1,000 subscribers, so in that regard, it might have been worth it. But I didn't even finish the game in those 30 hours. I just had enough done so I can do a review on it. It's been almost 3 years to the day since that game came out. I think we're a few weeks away from that, and I've still yet to return to it. I think I just burnt myself out, and then more games started coming out and I started moving on. It's pretty much on the top of the list of games that I want to play when I eventually do have downtime. But naturally, I don't have much downtime anymore. The other 2 games were Mario Party Jamboree and Shadow Generations. They both came out roughly a week apart, late last year. I decided to put more time into Jamboree at first. I mean, my channel's called Nintendine after all, so I ended up playing it quite a bit in the first few weeks of launch. Pretty much going through as much as I can with my family, and then also playing it on my own, not only for my channel, but to be part of the discussion online. But once again, because of how compelled I felt to put more effort into this game as soon as it launched, I burnt myself out. Instead of doing the usual 1 or 2 games a week that I've been doing for Superstars with my cousins, I played it way too much over a span of 2 months, with random people online, missing out on fun experiences with my cousins, and now I can barely stomach playing it once a month. Shadow Generations, on the other hand, I didn't rush it. And that's largely because I prioritized Jamboree over Shadow Generations. While I still did release a video on Shadow Generations, it was a lot more at a leisurely pace. I didn't release a video until a few weeks after the game launched. I took my time not only on the video but also on the experience. And until now, once every week or 2, I'll randomly boot it up and just start playing again. Just for fun, for an hour or 2. And I guess it's because I didn't burn myself out while chasing the hype. I guess my point in all of this is that games are often not going anywhere. Game consoles will be around. There is no real reason to be an early adopter. Hype is artificial. And the only benefit of being an early adopter, from my perspective, is hype. Is this weird feeling of being able to puff your chest out and say you were first. By all accounts, everything else highlights that it's better to wait. It's easier to grab a console without worrying about shortages. Perhaps not the case for Nintendo, but the price could be better. The variety of games could be better. The benefits like features and subscription services are oftentimes better. Look, at the end of the day, my point is when all of this started to go down, I didn't really think a boycott was necessary. And that's primarily because I didn't think a boycott could happen. I didn't think there would be enough traction for a boycott. Like, yeah, there'd be a lot of hate videos, but at the end of the day, a lot of what people are saying is true. Most people that are hating on it will still go and buy it. Most of the YouTubers that are saying let's boycott Nintendo are still going to go and buy the Nintendo Switch 2 because they need it for their channel. These things are true, but they were more true 2 weeks ago than they are today. What I've learned over the past few weeks is that I'm not even remotely as alone as I thought I was. Many of you, even if you do completely intend on getting the Nintendo Switch 2, completely agree with me. There's a clear vision here of how greedy Nintendo is, and how wrong they are treating the consumers, and how arrogant they've become because the assumption is that no matter what they do, we're gonna fall in line and we're gonna purchase whatever it is they sell to us at whatever price they give it to us. Nintendo, as I've highlighted, has been conceited in the past, and in the past, it's cost them their success. It's pushed them towards a setback, and it's cost them to have to come to the table and bargain. I don't think it's realistic for me to convince anybody to never purchase a Nintendo product again, if they are a Nintendo fan as much as I am. But I think it's realistic to suggest that we could give this a shot. We could actually push back. There are a lot of us that are very disappointed. A lot of us that feel betrayed. Many people have completely turned away from Nintendo. They've opted to buy something retro, they've opted to buy a PlayStation 5, some people have even bought a Steam Deck, using the money that they had set aside to buy the Nintendo Switch 2. I myself am currently in the process of buying myself a PC, partially for my channel, but also because I think it's worth getting into the world of Steam. The point is, for the first time since the launch of the Nintendo 3DS, I see momentum. I see people willing to push back. I see people willing to tell Nintendo they are not interested in the prices that it's offering. So I gotta ask you all, what's the rush? What's another 6 months? Are you so dead bent on playing Mario Kart World that it's not remotely worth seeing if this can lead to anything? Do you have to absolutely be one of the first people to play Donkey Kong Bonanza? Are you so finished with every other game in your library that putting off the purchase of the Nintendo Switch 2 for another 6 months will mean you have nothing to play? This is no longer about Nintendo versus the consumer. This is about the consumer versus the entire gaming industry. This is about us no longer allowing them to use excuses to justify their greed. This is worth it, and it will make a difference. We can't simply agree to just continue to buy everything that's for sale because they said that's what it's worth. At some point, we have to tell them our terms. After the past few weeks, I no longer think I'm naive. I think Nintendo Switch 2 is going to fail. It's no longer about whether it does or not, it's about how badly it fails. If it sold half as much as the Switch 1, I would still say it failed compared to the Switch 1, even if 75 million units is a good turnaround. But that's what happened with the 3DS, and many people view the 3DS as a failure in comparison to the DS. The 3DS and the Wii U gave us the Switch. Remember that. And if you still don't believe that there is a chance at a pushback, a chance that something can change, just give it 6 months. It's in your favor to wait it out. If at the start of 2026, it turns out that this actually amounted to nothing, people were still buying the Switch 2, and we just live in a small echo chamber of angry people online saying boycott Nintendo, then what's the worst case scenario at that point? Nintendo will still give you some kind of Mario Kart bundle. They always do. And any game that came out in the second half of 2025 will still be there. I don't know. I feel like we don't have much to lose, and we have a lot to gain. I genuinely don't like telling people what they should and shouldn't buy. But I think for the sake of the future of the industry, for the sake of our future experiences with Nintendo, it's worth boycotting them until the end of the year at least to see where it goes. I personally will not be giving them another penny, not even for anything on the Switch 1. But all I suggest for you is to at least not buy the Switch 2. Not yet. Because hopefully this all changes and we can all buy our console for $400 and the games for $70 tops. Either way, thanks for making it to the end of this talk, and thanks for hearing me out.